Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my preview for Season 11 of Formula E. So of course, it's been quite a while since the last Formula E race. I believe the last race was in July, so about 5 months ago. But we're back for another season, and of course, it's pretty exciting as it's going to be the start of the Gen 3 Evo era. So a new car, some new features as well. So I think lots of things for fans to be excited about. So starting with out, I'm actually going to talk about some of the changes, the new things for this year. So first, Gen 3 Evo. So all-wheel drive during duels, starts, and during attack mode. So that's going to be something that's new, having the front regen as well, plus having front power as well. So I think that's going to add a new element. The cars are going to be very, very fast, I think, in qualifying, especially this year. 36% more acceleration and 2% performance gain as well as what they're advertising, which around Monaco in qualifying is about 0.2 of a second of a lap just from that. Tires are also going to have 10% more grip, so they're going to be able to release a lot more power. And for example, things like attack mode are actually going to be a lot more useful this year than they were in Season 10 and Season 9, where taking attack mode actually seemed to be a hindrance, a penalty, rather than actually give you a burst of speed. And of course, also planned to be added this year is going to be attack charge, which is the pit stops where the car pits, they actually recharge some of the battery. That was of course supposed to come in Season 9, but it's had a lot of setbacks on the technical side, a lot of reliability issues as well, making sure that it works every single time, because of course you don't want to introduce it and it only works 80% of the time and you leave, and it adds a lot of jeopardy to the race result. And that of course would be roughly like a 30-second pit stop mid race, and I think that would also be a really good job, really important for kind of trying to break up the peloton racing, which I think is likely still going to be a bit of an issue this year, as the biggest factor that causes the peloton racing is actually the fact that the cars are a bit too draggy. But we'll see if the new bodywork can fix that. All right, next I want to move on to talking about this year's calendar. So 16 races this year total, 10 different events, a whole bunch of, I think, with 6 different double headers. Of course, season opens this weekend, December 7th, which is why I'm doing this video now and not at the start of January, as it's been as it was last year, for example. Second race, then we move on to Mexico City, same track as the F1 races at, and that will be on January 11th. Then our first of 2 new tracks for the year will be in Saudi Arabia, February 14th and February 15th, but not at Diriyah like we've been since Season 5. Instead, we'll be racing at Jeddah, so a slightly modified version of the F1 track. It'll basically cut around where turn 4, turn 5 is, go back, and then basically go back towards the start. There'll be a couple extra chicanes as well, just to help with the regen. Should be an interesting one, but we'll see how it goes. And then, of course, because a Formula E calendar would not be complete without a 2-month break, that's, of course, exactly what we have between rounds 3 and 4, as the next race is in Miami on April 12th, a full 2 months after the race in Saudi Arabia. Of course, there was supposed to be the race in Thailand in the middle, but it seems like that didn't work out as after some local elections happened. So that's unfortunate, but it's really something that I think Formula E really should try to get on top of, and I've been saying this for years, but unfortunately it seems like it's still a recurring issue. But yes, round 4, not Portland, instead it's in Miami at the Homestead, the Homestead circuit. It's actually like a NASCAR oval with like a road course in the middle, and of course Formula E won't be using oval; they'll be using the road course in the middle. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I quite liked Portland. I thought that was a really fun circuit. I think it would have suited both Gen 3 Evo, and it would have suited Gen 4 pretty good as well. So unfortunately, we're not staying in Portland. I think honestly, the US is so big they could have just hosted 2 races anyway. Then round 5, we have Monaco, of course. That will be a big one. That will be on May 3rd and 4th, a doubleheader. First time that Monaco's ever had 2 races. Usually it's just been the one. Round 6, Tokyo, May 17th, May 18th. Hopefully I'll be able to attend that one, but of course, not sure as of now. Round 7, Shanghai, May 31st, and then June 1st. Round 8, Jakarta, June 21st. Round 9, Berlin, July 12th, 13th. And then the final round, the doubleheader in London, will be on July 26th and 27th. So now I want to go through and kind of talk about each of the 11 teams in Formula E, their drivers, and then we'll finish up with some predictions just for the teams championship and for the drivers championship. And I'll be doing the teams in reverse order of last year's teams championship. So starting out with Kiro, the rebranded ERT/Neo team. They basically have new ownership, new American owners. So they've changed the name, and they've also changed the license. So no longer a Chinese team. They now run under a Chinese license. Last year, they were last in the championship with only 23 points. Their best result was a 4th place by Dan Ticktum. In fact, his only points of the season, that was in the first race in Misano. And the powertrain they'll be using this year is the Porsche powertrain, but it is the old Porsche powertrain from last year. So my expectations are they'll do all right the first couple races, but I think they're really going to fall off the pace as the season goes along. And historically, there's been a couple other instances in the past in Formula E where this has happened, where teams have used, a year-old powertrains, and generally they do pretty badly. Like, they're almost always been bottom 2 or 3 teams in the championship. So that's kind of my expectation this year for Kiro. Really strange team history. They were actually the very first team to win the Drivers' Championship. Didn't win the Teams' Championship that year, but they started out very, very well, as you can see by the graph, by their average minimum finishing position. But unfortunately for them, they've basically gotten worse and worse, where they got the worst they've ever gotten was season 6, I think it was, where their average minimum finishing position was 16th. So this is just a metric that I like to use to kind of rate teams' performance in the races. I should have said that at the start, but whatever. But of course, since season 6, they've been getting a little bit better, but they're still basically, a backmarker team. So not entirely surprised if they stay towards the back again this year. Moving on to their driver lineup for this year, a little bit of a surprise. Dan Ticktum staying with the team, not too surprised by that. But unfortunately, Sergio Sette Camara will not be returning for the team. I think he was very, very good last year and really deserved a seat again for this year. But I think as part of the deal with having the Porsche powertrain, Porsche basically, tried to get them to take one of their own drivers on, and that's kind of what's happened this year with them signing David Beckman as a Formula E rookie. So for Dan Ticktum, 25 years of age, this is his 4th year in the championship. He has a career best of 17th in the championship with no wins in his career. In my expected points model for Formula E, his career points percentage above expected is 95%. So 100% is basically average. Above 100% is better than average, and then below 100 is a little bit below the average. So for 95%, a little bit below average is what that number is saying. Now for Beckman, of course, he's first year in Formula E. He's 24 years of age. He actually stepped in for Andre Lauderer for 2 races in Jakarta in season 9, so he does have a little bit of Formula E experience. But this, of course, will be his first full season. Of course, no wins in those 2 races in Jakarta. And of course, because he's a rookie, he doesn't have a career best for points above expected. Now, for my Formula E race model, my model is actually very, very high on Dan Ticktum, and that's mostly because Sergio Sette Camara's only other, real full-time teammate that's, had other teammates in Formula 1 is Nico Müller. Camara did pretty well against Müller, and Müller's done very, very well against some of his recent teammates, and that's why, Dan Ticktum is so high on the model. But basically, it's expecting that Ticktum will score 100% of the team's points. Points differential would be about 32 points, and the finishing position differential will be 5.67 points in Ticktum's favor. Probably a little bit bigger than what it'll actually be, but again, it'll be interesting to see how Ticktum does and how Beckman does this year. And for my model rank in terms of all drivers in Formula E history, Ticktum actually ranks 4th. I think that's a little bit higher than where he should be, but unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of how the model is made and the quality of the data. All right, moving on to the next team, Mahindra. So for Mahindra, a team that's been had a rough go of things recently. They have been, I think they're actually, as of this season, they're the only team that's been in Formula E from the very, very beginning without any kind of name changes or rebrands at all. Last year, not a great season. They finished 10th in the championship, 47 points, and their best result was 2 4th place finishes. And of course, they are using their own Mahindra powertrain. They've been hiring, kind of secretly hiring and collaborating with a lot of the Mercedes staff that basically left when Mercedes left Formula E. So they've been trying to, recruit outside help to improve their powertrain, as they know it's a big issue. And you can see from the graph as well, at the very start of Formula E, they were kind of in the midfield. Then they actually progressed very, very rapidly, had their best season 3, with Felix Rosenqvist and Nick Heidfeld. But then ever since then, they've kind of been going the wrong direction. They were still pretty good in Gen 2, but then basically ever since we've gotten to Gen 3, they basically have been a backmarker team. So they'll really be hoping to turn it around. And I think their driver lineup is definitely decent enough that they can definitely, if the car is capable, they can score some good points. Now, taking a look at their driver lineup, unchanged from last year, it will be again Eduardo Mortara and Nick De Vries. For Mortara, 37 years of age, this is his 8th season in Formula E. His career best in the championship is 2nd. He came very, very close to winning in season 7. Again, had a bit of an outside shot in season 8 as well. He has 6 career wins, and his career points above expected is 125%, so that's very good. For Nick De Vries, 29 years of age, this is his 5th season Formula E. His career best is 1st. He is your season 7 champion. He has 4 wins in his career. Interestingly, his career points above expected is actually below 100. It's only 91%. And again, that kind of fits what many fans say when they talk about De Vries, and how they often talk about him as generally being the weakest champion. I think you can make an argument between him and Piquet Jr., but that being said, I think Piquet Jr., had a very, very good first season Formula E. It's just that for De Vries, the season he won, there was obviously known as the qualifying lottery championship because of the qualifying format those years. Let's see, for my race model, unfortunately for De Vries, it's not too high on him either. So for percentage of team points, it's expecting Mortara to get 87%, De Vries to get 13%. Points difference, 18.1, and finishing position difference, 3.2 positions. Now, in terms of the model rank for all drivers in Formula E history, Mortara is ranked 13th, and for De Vries, he's ranked 40th. And there's only really been, I think, 50 or 60 drivers who've been raced in Formula E full-time since its beginning about a decade ago. So again, not great for De Vries, and he's definitely hoping to have a good season, kind of bounce back from what was a pretty poor return to the sport after his ill-fated tenure in Formula One. So it'll be interesting to see how both drivers do this year. Moving on to the next team, and I know I've labeled them as Abt, but it's really Lola, Yamaha, Abt, all 3 of them kind of together working as a technical partnership. So it'll be interesting to see how the broadcasters describe them and talk about them this year. Last year was, I think, definitely a good year based on what the expectations were going into it, but still not fantastic. They were 9th in the championship, 56 points, and their best result was Nico Müller's 4th place finish at round 2 of Misano. Very, very close to getting a podium for the team. They will be using the Lola Yamaha powertrain this year. That's the new powertrain coming in for this year. So again, I think expectations will probably be pretty low, especially for the first 3 quarters of the season. Looking at the results through Formula E history, I've used the results from when they were Audi as well here, but they were obviously a very, very good team, one of the best teams in Gen 1. In Gen 2, things got a little bit worse, and then they of course left the series at the end of season 7. They came back as Abt for season 9, of course, coming back fresh with a brand new setup and using the Mahindra powertrain. They were pretty rubbish, the slowest team in season 9, but they definitely made big strides forwards last year in season 10. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. They do have a new driver this year, and that is, of course, a rookie, none other than Zane Maloney. Joining him, of course, will be Lucas di Grassi, as well, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. And I think this will definitely be an interesting lineup, one that I think there's going to be a fair amount of attention for. For Abt, though, I think there's going to be questions about how many points they're going to score, especially since Nico Müller, who of course is leaving the team for going to Andretti for this year, scored so many of their points last year. I think there will be questions about how good this team can be this year. But for di Grassi, he's 40 years of age. This is his 11th season Formula E. His career best is first he won the Formula E Championship in Season 3. He has 13 wins in his career, which I think is joint best, or it's either best or joint best for most wins in Formula E history. And his career points above expected is 129%, so very, very good. For Zane Maloney, 21 years of age, this is his first season. Has never competed in Formula E before, so doesn't really have any career stats. This year he competed in Formula 2, doing a pretty good job. I believe he's fourth in the championship. Coming after basically when he left the series, of course, there's still a weekend to go in Abu Dhabi, but he of course can't race there because he's too busy doing Formula E this weekend. So definitely excited to see how he can do in Formula E. He definitely has been good enough in Formula 2 that he's a guy who I think could be, a future star of the series if, things go well for him. So I'm definitely interested in seeing how Maloney shakes out this year. All right, for my race model predicting for, how the teammate relationship will go, I think it's about what you would expect, given Degrassi is a super experienced driver and of course has been here for so long. But that being said, he's also on the older side, for being 40 years of age, and he'll also be the oldest driver on the grid. And again, he's at that age where, your performance will start to decline. But that being said, the model is predicting Degrassi to get 88% of the team's points, Maloney to get 22%, and the points difference will be 18.6 points, with a finishing position difference on average of being 3.28. For model rank for Degrassi, 18, so again a little bit below Mortara, which is a bit surprising, and of course for Maloney, he is not ranked at all. All right, moving on to the next team, Maserati. So last year, pretty disappointing season. They finished 8th in the championship, 81 points. Their best result was a first place finish by Max Günther, and that was at the Tokyo E-Prix. And this year they'll be using the DS powertrain again. So again, same powertrain, but of course with a brand new driver lineup. I'll go to the driver lineup in a bit, but first let's take a look at kind of the results through Formula E history. So this was for most of Formula E, for Gen 1, Gen 2, this was the Venturi team before, of course, rebranding as Maserati for Season 9. And for Gen 1, they were kind of a midfield team, lower midfield, I would say. And definitely for the start of Gen 2 as well, also, again, a midfield team. But they had a massive upturn in form, Season 7, Season 8, using the Mercedes powertrain. And that basically accumulated with them, finishing second in the team's championship in Season 8. Of course, Gen 3's been a little bit tougher. The DS powertrain hasn't been as good, and I think their driver lineup, especially last year, was definitely not great. Of course, Max Günther, Jehan Daruvala, Günther scoring the vast majority of the team's points, and Daruvala really, I think, hurting the team in the team's championship. So again, 2 new drivers coming in for this year. I think expectations will be a little bit tempered, but that being said, I think it'll be exciting to see how those 2 new drivers shake out. So, of course, that driver lineup is none other than Stoffel Vandoorne and Jake Hughes. For Vandoorne, 32 years of age, this is his 7th season in Formula E. He is his best career championship position is first. He is your Season 8 champion. He has 3 career wins, and his career points above expected is 107%, so pretty good there. For Jake Hughes, 30 years of age. Again, I'm always surprised when I see that number, realize how old he is. He, of course, was, quite old. He was quite a bit older, when he went through F3, F2, F1, not F1, but he was, always a little bit on the older side when he kind of went through the junior categories. This is his 3rd year in Formula E. His career best in the championship's 12th. No career wins yet, and his career points above expected is actually pretty bad. It's 67%. He's known as a very good qualifier. I think he has 3 or 4 pole positions already, but unfortunately, that energy efficiency, perhaps racecraft as well, is not quite there yet over his first 2 seasons. So again, it'll be interesting to see how he does this year. For my race model, it actually flips the other way around. So Vandoorne, unfortunately, is not rated that highly in my model. The teammates he's beaten, basically Vandoorne and De Vries and Paffett, are not rated that highly. And his one other teammate that he's had, Jean-Eric Vergne's, also not rated that highly, interestingly enough. So again, definitely hurts Vandoorne in that model there. But for my model, predicting Hughes to get 66% of the team's points and for Van Dorn to get 34%. Points difference, one big difference is that for the teams I already did, they basically used the back marker version of the model, so they're basically projected to not get that many points. But for basically everyone forward until we get to, I think, Jaguar and Porsche and maybe a couple others, they'll be using the midfield models. Of course, more points, so dynamics between percentages and the points gap will be a little bit different. But for Hughes, expected to score, have a points difference of 37.3 in Hughes' favor, as well as a average finishing position difference of 2.14 also in Hughes' favor. Model rank, just if you're curious, it ranks Hughes 14th and it ranks Van Dorn in 38th. All right, moving on to our next team, and that is McLaren. So for McLaren, last year they finished 7th in the championship, 101 points, and their best result was Sam Bird's win at the Sao Paulo E-Prix last year. So it'll be interesting to see if Bird can again be in the fight for the win this year. They'll be using the Nissan powertrain, and historically they were the Mercedes team for all of Gen 2. Except for, of course, Season 5 when they were HWA. But after Season 8 and Mercedes leaving the series, they rebranded as McLaren. So, of course, that first season as HWA was pretty bad. They were basically, a back marker team, pretty slow. But their performance improved massively Season 6, Season 7, and then Season 8 as well. You can see on the graph the 2 dots for Season 6 and Season 7 are a little bit lower, and that's just because of the nature of the qualifying dynamics and the fact that you had a negative feedback loop. So, if you performed well, you would be massively hurt. And if you perform well, you're high in the championship, you would be at a massive disadvantage for qualifying for the next race, basically. But of course, Season 8, when they kind of fixed the qualifying format, Mercedes were very, very strong, and they, of course, won the team's championship. But that being said, going into Season 3, while a lot of the same personnel are there, at least on the team side, not necessarily the powertrain, because they're a customer team now, things have been a little bit rough, and they've been towards the bottom of the midfield for the first 2 years of Gen 3. All right, taking a look at their driver lineup for this year, all British lineup, Sam Bird and Taylor Barnard, two drivers at very different ends of their career. For Bird, he's 37 years of age. This is his 11th season Formula E. His career best in the series is 3rd in the championship. So again, never won a championship. Very, very good driver, especially in Gen 1. I don't think at this point he's realistically going to be able to win a championship just with his recent performances and with his age. But again, you never know. 12 career wins, very, very good. His career points above expected is also very good at 110%. For Barnard, he's 20 years of age, very, very young. He, of course, this is his first season Formula E, and he, of course, finished 22nd in last year's championship, stepping in for Sam Bird after he hurt his wrist at the Monaco E-Prix last year. No wins in his career, obviously. Career points above expected, also in NA, as sample size was just a bit too small. So very, very interesting dynamic again. Very experienced driver, very young driver, similar to Abt as well. For Barnard, he raced in Formula 2 this past season. Results not great, but he was driving for a pretty slow team. So again, that's to be expected. All right, for race model, for this pair of drivers, it's expecting Bird to get 76% of the team's points, 24% for Barnard, and average points, and expecting the points difference to be 58.5 in Bird's favor. Average finishing position difference 3.36, and model rank 20th for Bird, and of course for Barnard not available. All right, moving on to next in the team's championship from last year, and that is Envision, arguably one of the most disappointing teams from Season 10. They finished 6th in the championship with 121 points after winning the team's championship the year before. So last year, their best result was second place. Didn't win a single race, but they did have 4 second place finishes. So perhaps if things had gone a little bit differently, they might have won one of those races. They of course used the Jaguar powertrain, arguably one of the strongest powertrains in the field. So that's why I think it was such a disappointment that they only finished 6th last year. And if you look at Envision's history in the team, they of course were virgin for I think much of all of Gen 1 and I think most of Gen 2 as well. They've been a very, very good team, generally being a low front running team. Not quite, never, dominant, but they've always been, in the fight for wins and podiums, consistently through Formula E's history. And then, of course, Season 9, they, of course, won the team's championship, so you can see that dip towards the bottom there. And then, of course, they had a massive upswing the following year, where unfortunately they had their worst result ever in Formula E. So, of course, it'll be interesting to see what they do this year. One of the big changes from Season 9 to Season 10, of course, was Nick Cassidy left the team, joined Jaguar, and they brought Robin Frijns back to the team. So, I think there are some questions about, is the driver lineup really good enough to challenge for championships at this point? Again, I would argue probably not. But that being said, Buemi, I think, only scored like half of his points that he scored in Season 9, so I do think the car did get a little bit worse as well last year. Of course, their drivers, Robin Frijns, Sebastian Buemi, very experienced driver lineup for Frijns, 33 years of age. This is his 9th season in Formula E. His career best is 4th in the championship with 2 career wins. Points above expected, 113%, so very good there. For Buemi, 36 years of age, 11th season in the championship. He, again, is one of those few drivers left from the very first season. He has 13 career wins, and his career points above expected is 109%. So again, both of them in the positive there. For the race model for Formula E, it's predicting Frijns to get 56% of the team's points, Buemi 44%. Points difference, 14.2 in Frijns' favor, an average finishing position difference of 0.82. So predicting that this is going to be a pretty close teammate head-to-head. So again, wouldn't be entirely surprised if it went in Buemi's favor. Model rank for Frijns 7th and for Buemi 12th. Moving on to 5th in the team's championship, and that is Andretti. So 169 points for them last year. Their best result was a first, and that was set by Jake Dennis at the first race in Diriyah. They, of course, will be using the Porsche powertrain this year, and they've definitely a team that's been very up and down throughout Formula E's history. You can look at the graph. Gen 1, they basically started pretty good that first season with Jean-Eric Vergne, and basically just got progressively worse as the years went along. Massive improvement Gen 2 that first year in Season 5, but then got a little bit worse and then basically stayed kind of towards upper midfield, lower top running team. And then Season 9, again, big improvement in performance, where they, of course, won the Drivers' Championship with Jake Dennis, and then again got a little bit worse. So you do have a little bit of a pattern there where the first year of every generation, they've been their best, and then they basically get a little bit worse, and they either continue to get worse or they basically flatline. So Andretti will definitely be wanting to reverse that trend, and they'll want to bounce back, I think, after a bit of a rough Season 10. Driver lineup for this year, I think, is very, very exciting. They're going to have Jake Dennis and Nico Müller driving their cars this year. For Dennis, 29 years of age, this is his 5th season in Formula E. His career best is first. He is your Season 9 champion, 6 wins in the series, and his career points above expected, 133%. So very, very good there. For Nico Müller, he finally gets a promotion to a top seat in Formula E. I say top seat in the sense that it's a lot better than the Dragons and the apps that he's basically driven up to this point. 32 years of age, so a little bit older. Career 5th season Formula E, just like Dennis. Career best of 12th in the championship, so pretty low there. No wins in his career, of course, driving such Tory cars that he has, but his career points above expected is very, very good, 138%. Now, interestingly enough, for my race model for predicting, which driver will come out on top, it's actually Nico Müller in this case. So my model is predicting Müller's going to get 60% of the team's points. Points difference will be 22.7 points in Müller's favor, with an average finishing position difference of 1.3. Model rank has Müller first and it has Dennis 6. So it's not like Dennis is any slouch either in this model, but it definitely has Müller ranked very, very highly after he basically beat his last 2 teammates, Lucas di Grassi and Robin Frijns, so thoroughly. So again, this will be a really tough test for Müller, a driver who's a bit younger, who's kind of in his prime, in his team. And this is, I think, a teammate head-to-head that I'm definitely really looking forward to seeing who comes out on top this year. Next up, we have Nissan, fourth in the championship last year, 182 points. This was probably one of the biggest, positive surprises last season after they had a pretty bad season 9. They got 2 wins courtesy of Oliver Rowland, and they, of course, are a factory team using the Nissan powertrain. Now, looking at the team's history, they, of course, were Renault EDAMs for the Gen 1, Gen 2. They were like Nissan EDAM, so it was really the same EDAMs teams that was just rebranded from Renault to Nissan. But Gen 3, it's been a lot of new people there basically using the factory Nissan team, using the powertrain basically developed using Intel from Japan, basically. But for season 1, for Gen 1, they were basically the de facto best team. Of course, won 3 of the 4 teams championships and won a driver's championship as well. First half of Gen 2, they were also very, very strong. Not quite good enough to win a title, not quite consistent enough either, but they definitely went through a very, very rough stretch last 2 years of Gen 2, kind of going into season 9 as well, where they're basically turned into a very, very slow backmarker team, and they've been kind of gradually rebuilding ever since. And again, you can see kind of on the graph, season 8 was kind of at their worst, and they've kind of been steadily rebuilding, steadily improving to season 9, and steadily improving again to season 10. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do this year in season 11. 2 drivers this year are, again, Oliver Rowland and Norman Nato. For Rowland, 32 years of age, this is his 7th season in Formula E. His career best is 4th in the championship, which was this past season. 3 wins in his career, and his career points above expected is 121%. For Nato, also 32 years of age, this is his 4th year in Formula E. His career best is 10th in the championship, and he has 1 career win. Career points above expected, 94%, so a little bit below average, but still, not bad, and should be a sizable improvement over what Sasha Fenestraz was giving them last year. In terms of race model, it's predicting that Rowland will get 58% of the team's points. That can't be right. Okay, yeah, that should be 58 and then 32. Yeah, 50 and 32, not 62. That's a bit of a mistake there. But being 31 minutes in this video, I don't have time to restart it. But for Rowland, points different, 38.6 points in his favor. Finishing position difference, 1.42. Model rank, 27th for Rowland, 32nd for Nato. So I think Nato is ranked, pretty closely to where I think he should be. For Rowland, I think he's a little bit low. His half season against Degrassi definitely worked against him. I think that's holding him back a little bit. But again, really strong seasons against other teammates like Nato would definitely help to improve his rating. So moving into the top 3 teams, and again, top 3 teams in the championship last year, DS Penske, Porsche, and Jaguar. So first, taking a look at DS Penske. Season 10, they finished 3rd in the championship, 200 points. Didn't get a win though, but their best result was 2 second place finishes, courtesy of Jean-Eric Vergne. And they, of course, are using the DS powertrain, the French car company. Now, for their team's history, I've done this a little bit differently than the other teams. So basically, season 9, the Techeetah team, the staff from the Techeetah team basically moved over to Dragon. Dragon Penske basically took all their staff and fired them, except for Jay Penske, and they basically merged the 2 together. So it was basically the Techeetah staff with the Dragon entry, like the team entry, and they basically became the new DS Penske team. So that's why I've kind of gotten both teams here. It's kind of a merged history there. But for Dragon, they actually started out Formula E very, very well. They were 2nd in the team's championship that very first year, and they were, a pretty good team. But things basically have gradually got worse and worse as more manufacturers got involved, and more money was required to actually perform at the front. And basically by the end, season 8, they were the slowest team and one of the slowest teams in Formula E history. On the other hand, for Techeetah / Aguri, which is what it first started out with, they were basically a midfield team when they first started. They became Techeetah season 3, and they quickly became a front-running team, and they were arguably one of the best teams second half of Gen 1 as well as the first half of Gen 2. Second half of Gen 2, things got a little bit worse, never really quite able to get, title winning form. And then, of course, these past 2 years, I think, have been a bit of a tough learning curve for the team. They've still been a good team, been towards the front, but they've never really been in contention for either the drivers or the team's championship. And that's something that they're definitely hoping to change this year. All right, taking a look at their drivers, they do have a new driver lineup. So again, Jean-Eric Vergne staying at the team. He's basically been with DS for many, many years now at this point. 34 years of age. This is his 11th season in Formula E. He had his career best is first, of course, being the only double champion. In fact, the only champion with more than one title in Formula E history. 11 career wins and a career points above expected of 110%. For his teammate Max Gunther, 27 years of age. This is his 7th season in Formula E. His career best is 7th in the championship, which actually, thinking back on that, seems a little bit low, but it does kind of track with the fact that he is a pretty inconsistent driver. He does have 5 wins, so again, when he's on it, when he's performing well, he can be one of the best drivers in the series on his day, but he unfortunately has many days where that's not the case. But that being said, career points above expected, 117%, still very, very good. And again, it's kind of more of that kind of story when you look at the race model. Race model actually favors Max Gunther, expects him to get 62% of the team's points, and expects Vergne to only get 38% of the team's points. Predicted points difference, 62.9 in Gunther's favor, with an average finishing position difference of 2.31. Model rank has Gunther in 11th, and it has Jean-Eric Vergne in 32nd. So again, pretty big gap there. It'll be interesting to see how this works out. I'm actually would predict, I'm going to be doing my predictions a little bit at the end of this video, but I do think Vergne will be the better of the two drivers. All right, moving on to second in the championship, and that is Porsche. 332 points last year. They had 7 wins in the series, and they, of course, are using their own Porsche powertrain. For Porsche, they joined Formula E Season 6, so again, about halfway through Formula E's pretty short history, and they've been on an upward trajectory ever since. That first year was a bit tough. They were, a midfield team, but they've basically gotten better and better every single year, and these last 2 years, they've definitely been in the hunt for the title, both years being one of the strongest teams in the series. Now, taking a look at their two drivers, they're keeping the same lineup as last 2 years, Pascal Wehrlein and Antonio Felix da Costa. For Wehrlein, 30 years of age, this is his 7th season in Formula E. His career best is first, of course, your season 10 champion, your reigning champion in the series. He has 7 wins in his career, but, a bit unexpectedly, his career points above expected is only 99%. So that's a little bit unusual, but that being said, it'll be interesting to see what he can do this year. For his teammate da Costa, 33 years of age. This is his 11th year in the series. Career best of first. He again won the championship in season 6. 12 career wins, and his career points above expected is 119%. Now, of course, because this is a teammate matchup that we've seen before in Formula E, again, I don't think there would be too much surprise about, these results here. So my model is expecting Wehrlein to get 57% of the team's points, have points difference of 34.2 in Wehrlein's favor, with an average finishing position difference of 1.26 in Wehrlein's favor. Model rank for Wehrlein 9th, for da Costa 26. And last up, your team's champion from Season 10, Jaguar. You'll notice I'm using the old logo. I actually made these logos for this video and for this year about, like 3 weeks ago, before the whole Jaguar controversy, came out with their, rebrand and everything. And the pictures and logos and stuff that I'm using for Jaguar are actually from last year. So I don't actually know what their car looks like for this year. I don't know what their suits are going to look like. And again, I guess we're going to have to wait to see how that turns out. Of course, the best result last year first. They had four wins last year, and they, of course, are using the Jaguar powertrain. In terms of the results in Formula E history, again, similar to Mercedes and Porsche in some ways, started out very, very slow their first year in Season 3, but they have progressively gotten better. Through Gen 2, they were very, very good. And again, first part of Gen 2, a little bit slower, but still able to compete for wins here and there. Towards the end of Gen 2, they were one of the strongest cars. and their star driver Mitch Evans, came very close to winning the Formula E title on several occasions. And as we've gone into Gen 3, they've just gotten better as well, to the point where they're basically the favorites for the team's championship. I would say going into this year, just like they were last year with how strong their driver lineup is. Now, speaking of their driver lineup, all Kiwi, all New Zealand driver lineup with Mitch Evans, Nick Cassidy. For Evans, 30 years of age, this is his 9th season Formula E. His career best in the championship is second, which he's done twice. 12 career wins and a career points above expected of 121%. For Nick Cassidy, also 30 years of age, 5th season Formula E's career best is second, and that was in season 9. 7 career wins, career points above expected, 110%. For my race model, gives Evans the edge, 54% for Evans, points difference 20.1 in Evans' favor, and finishing position difference of 0.74. Model rank, second and third. So basically my model is saying that Evans and Cassidy, the second and third best drivers in Formula E history, a very, very formidable lineup, all the same. All right, so finishing up this video, and we're already at 40 minutes, I'm going to make my predictions for season 11 of Formula E. So first, taking a look at the team's championship. I think for the team's championship, I think it's going to be pretty safe to say that I'm going to put Abt, Lola, Yamaha in 11th. New powertrain, one very inexperienced driver and one driver who had a very bad season last year. So I think that combination, is not going to allow for that many points to be scored next year. Or this year, I should say. Number 10, I'm going to go with Kiro. I think their driver lineup is okay, and I think Ticktum's good enough that he'll be able to get points if the car is capable. They're going to have the old Porsche powertrain, which again, like I said, for the first couple of races, I think it should be competitive, but I think they're going to fall quite off the pace as the season progresses, so I can't really justify putting them higher. 9th, I'm going to go with Mahindra. They're still stuck with the same, Mahindra powertrain, so I think that's going to limit them. I think their driver lineup is okay, and I think that's for that reason I decided to put them above both Kiro and Abt. That being said, if they have a competitive powertrain, I wouldn't be surprised if they could perhaps punch a little bit higher, perhaps 7th or 8th. 8th, I'm going to go with Maserati, using the DS powertrain again, but I'm not too convinced by their driver lineup. Vandoorne was great in Gen 2. He's been pretty bad, pretty underwhelming in Gen 3. And again, same with Hughes. He hasn't been great. He's been great in qualifying, but not great in the races. So I'm a little bit underwhelmed by Maserati's driver lineup. For that reason, I've put them in 8th. Number 7, I'm going to go with Envision. Again, similar reasons to Maserati. I'm not super convinced by their driver lineup for Frijns and Buemi. Last year, I thought they were really inconsistent. They would have some good races, but they have a lot of anonymous races where they would just either, Frijns would qualify well and then fall back, or Buemi would qualify poorly and then, progress a little bit, but not really enough to get good points finishes. Number 6, I'm going to go with McLaren. Nissan powertrain's been improving quite a bit the last couple of years. And I think Bird still, especially last year, showed that he's good enough that if the car is capable, he can still get a win or get, consistently good finishes. And I think between that and Barnard also showed some good promise as well. So for that reason, I'm putting them above Envision and Maserati. 5th, I'm going to go with DS Penske. So maybe it's a bit of a surprise I have DS Penske this low. I do think their driver lineup is very good, but I'm not super sold on their powertrain. They've kind of plateaued the last couple of years. They've made almost no progress, like from the powertrain side from season 9 to season 10. So that does worry me a little bit. And also the fact is that I think, because I wonder how much of the, Dragon and Penske influence is perhaps holding this back, as they obviously ran a very efficient unit when they were as a very efficient team when they were Techeetah. I wonder if they've not really able to get that efficiency as a team working under this new kind of style. So again, I want to be proven wrong, and hopefully they'll be fighting a little bit higher up, but again, not super sold on the powertrain. Number 4, I'm going to go with Andretti. I think they have a very, very strong lineup, and assuming they can get over their qualifying woes from last year, I think they should be a very, very competitive team this year. Number 3, I'm going to go with Nissan. I think they're going to stay in their same upward trajectory. Maybe Roland can challenge for the Drivers' Championship, but I do think that they're going to be held back a little bit by Nato. I don't think he's quite on the same level as the other front-running drivers, so that's why I'm only putting them third in the team's championship. Number 2, I'm going to go with Porsche. I think they're going to be one of the strongest teams, but similar to Nissan, I just don't think they have the drivers lineup that Jaguar does. And so for that reason, I'm predicting a repeat of a Jaguar team championship. All right, so moving on to the last part, and that is, of course, Drivers' Championship predictions. So predictions for the Drivers' Championship. I think for the bottom 12 drivers, points are going to be so random that I don't think there's much point in predicting that, because you can have one fluke result that makes a massive difference. So I'm only going to really focus on the top 10. So for 10th, I'm going to go with Sam Bird. For 9th, I'm going to go with Max Gunther. For 8th, I'm going to go with Jean-Eric Vergne. For 7th, I'm going to go with Antonio Felix da Costa. 6th, I'm going to go with Nico Muller. 5th, Jake Dennis. 4th, Pascal Wehrlein. 3rd, Oliver Rowland. 2nd, Nick Cassidy. And 1st, I am predicting Mitch Evans. I predicted a Mitch Evans championship last year. Very, very close to that coming true. And hopefully, the experience of last year, hopefully they can, learn from that. And, I think this year I'm predicting that Evans will finally kind of get over his duck and finally claim a Formula E championship. So there you go. There's my preview for season 11 of Formula E. Looking forward to it quite a bit. Of course, I'll be doing my review of all the races like I did last year. Not sure if I'm going to be doing previews and power rankings again. The view counts just generally weren't there. Hopefully with the new style that I'm doing, not using a whiteboard, using a little bit more high-tech approach, the reviews will be a little bit more well-received. But again, that's something I will have to wait and see. Anyway, if you're still watching after 46 minutes, I commend you for that. Definitely not the most interesting preview you're going to see, but that being said, I enjoy talking about these kind of stats and stuff. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.